to Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. So I wanted to give you guys an update. So I just got back from my grandma's yesterday, back in time for my birthday. And I do have a birthday book that I will film later, maybe tomorrow, because I'm not done. Like I opened gifts from Terry and then from my sister, so I could call them in case so I could call her and and show my appreciation, since they might be busy. On the weekends sometimes they have games and kids baseball games and all that. So I wanted to call them in the morning. So I went and opened her presents, and then I opened my friends, and then I will open my parents' gift for my parents later tonight, because we were going to go out to eat for Italian, because Italian is one of my favorite cuisines to eat. And we used to go to Olive Garden, but I still think Olive Garden has good food, but it's the aesthetics of the place is not great all the time, and it never really changes. And of course, with the price of how prices just are so expensive and everything is so expensive lately, it's like you kind of want the place to, even if it's good food, you still kind of care about aesthetics of the place where you're eating when you go out to eat. So, and there is an Italian place, that's within walking distance. We'll drive, of course, but it's we'll actually drive the golf cart, and it's a nicer, cute little place. Thankfully, the rainstorm didn't last that long. We was told, on the internet they said, on the weather website they said that a rainstorm was coming, and it only lasted until noon, and now it's sunny. I don't know how cool it is though. It might still be pretty warm, maybe even muggy out. So that's when I'll do my gift for my parents. And I think my aunt's gonna probably my aunt is visiting with us, so I think she's gonna give me a little something, at least at least a nice card. So I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to do that, film that video for you guys. But like I said, we went to my grandma's, and so I was trying. So just like always, I was struggling with just limiting the number of books, and I already kind of, I think I mentioned this before, my struggle with limiting myself to how many books I bring. And finally, I just, gave in and was just venting to my parents, hoping they'll give me some advice. And my only hesitancy of talking to my parents is that, they're probably going to realize that the reason why I struggle, and I've already noticed this myself, I already am aware of this, that the struggle comes from the fact that I have so many options. And I have a lot of unfinished books that I've started that, I'm at the halfway or maybe less than halfway, and that I need to get back to and read. And I'm always worried that my mom's going to say, maybe you need to do a no-buy rule. Because I know there are a lot of people on BookTube that have chosen to do that. And I think if you feel like it's necessary, you feel like you have to, you would feel comfortable if you just did that and limited yourself in that way. Or you feel like it's absolutely necessary, you have to because you're, whether you're financially strapped or not, like, that's fine. That's good. Like, but for me personally, I agree with the people that are, like, saying that they feel like it's a little bit too much temptation and you're being a little too hard on yourself. At least I should say, I feel like I'm being too hard on myself. And I wouldn't be very good at not doing that, because reading is my main hobby. And I know and yes, reading and shopping for books are two different hobbies. But I think I would get restless, I would get frustrated, and maybe, yeah, you could argue that it will give you more motivation. And yes, I know that there is the library, and the library is within walking distance, and I do appreciate my library's existence. But as I always say, I'm trying to read the books that I own anyway. So, in my library, and maybe this is a lame excuse, but my library is small, so not every book that I'm interested in reading, And sometimes there are some books that I'm like, check and see if it's on Libby, and they don't have it. And of course, with Libby and the library, you have a time limit. You have to, I don't want to be renewing my books constantly. So I want to prioritize getting those books read before. So I end up prioritizing library books. And with the library, because you're not paying for it, I'm going to get a bunch of, sometimes I'll get 4 or 5 books. And then I don't read the books I own, which that's the point, to get the books you own read. So it's, it's like kind of not a, it's very, very stressful. So I just don't like the idea of a no buy rule. I think it's a little, if, like I said, if you feel like that's necessary for you, or you feel more comfortable doing that, that's fine. I'm not trying to, judging people's inevitable, but I am trying not to judge people when I don't want to come off as that I am when I say that I think it can be a little harsh when you say, oh, you're not allowed to buy, granted, you can receive books as gifts too. But yeah, I was apprehensive that my mom would say that. But then instead of saying that, what she actually said was just make sure before you buy a new book, that just make sure you read a bunch of books, or at least a few books, before you buy a new one, which I've always thought about that. It's just, I don't ever keep track of it, and I could be reading something. I could, maybe I've got some books read, but then I'll be in the middle of a book, or I chose to read a book that's 500 plus pages, which will take me more time to read. And so I struggle to find the balance. And maybe it sounds like an excuse, but it's all I got, to say in my defense. So I feel like I need to try to do that. To try to, make sure I get, and maybe just include some shorter books while I'm reading longer books, so that I'll always be making sure that I read something. But not because, and I don't mean as I'm checking off a list. I mean as in, like, just to make the progress of going through my library a little, like I feel, feeling like I'm actually, accomplishing something. Like I'm actually reading some of the books before I buy new ones. And as I always say, I feel like there are people that are worse than me, when it comes to hauling books. Granted, those people that, looks like they've hauled like 10 or 20 books, it could potentially because, they were used book shopping, which, by the way, I do that. I have a used bookstore within walking distance. We used to have another one that, you had to drive to, but they weren't getting much business, so they closed up shop, which makes me sad. But yeah, I do book shopping, use book shopping, and that's where I get when I have more than one book, that's where they come from, as you see when I do small book hauls. And it's like, it's barely a haul because it's like 3 or 4, maybe, on a rare occasion, 4 books, but usually most times 3 books. And maybe, now granted, maybe someone would think because I'm getting 3 books, but then, within the month. But I do make sure to, at least go once a week. Not every month. Not every day within the month, but just a couple, maybe a couple, once every couple weeks or so. So I really think, it's just, it might just be because I watch so many of those videos that are discussing consumerism and our society's problem with consumerism, that maybe I feel defensive and guilty when really I shouldn't be, because one, they're not talking to me directly anyway, and they might say, well, if you feel guilty, maybe it means you have a problem, you just don't want to admit it. Like, there are a lot of times you see that whenever someone says something before the other person mentions it or points it out directly, then the person is like, oh, I'm not the one who said it, you said it. Like, and they're like, oh, you just don't want to admit it. Which which really bugs me whenever people do that. I mean, not that I have that problem. Like, people won't do that to me necessarily, but, I see it. And, but, yeah, I do have a guilty conscience a little bit, but then I remember, there are people, like I said, people that looks like they are worse than me. And, like, the other thing I was going to say is, other than used book shopping, it could be because those are books that they've gathered within a month or within a couple months or within like 6 months. And they're just all showing it now. So they have, for a book haul. Because I always do feel weird when I just do a 3-book book haul. 3 or 4 books at the most. But I kind of like, showing you guys what I've got. And, and I know I'm not the only one. And I'm sorry, people think that's, you're only just showing off what you bought and you're not really reading it. But you don't know when people say that, oh, I doubt they're really reading them. They don't always know. Not every person who does a lot of not every person who does a bunch of book hauls is necessarily not reading their books. Yes, I know that you see videos where people will haul books and then a few weeks later they're getting rid of it. And maybe, what, in defense of those people, they could have read the book and they just decide not to keep it. To me, that's valid. That you can read a book and decide and have read the whole thing, or at least start reading it but then decide to DNF that. I don't think that's a crime. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And you don't have any proof if they read it or not, unless they do a review of the book. Like, if you happen to look at that specific person's Goodreads page, which to me is a little bit, a little weird. But I know if you're deliberately checking their, like, but, if you're, you don't, other than that, you don't know if they've read the book. I mean, but I do think it is valid that they've read the book and decide, no, I'm not going to keep it. Like, I didn't buy this was given to me, but I read The Art of Racing in the Rain, and then once I read it, I was like, okay, I like this book, this was fun, I enjoyed this book, but I don't need to keep it, Of course, like I said, I didn't spend money, that was given to me by my aunt. But yeah, that's my little rant. So let's talk about, I ended up settling on, I decided to, I was like, I'm going to stick to that, because my mom said, also, just stick to, only, or it might have been my dad who said, just stick to, motivate me to stick to 3 books. Because I talked to my dad after as well. I have this thing where I don't directly ask them. I just say, I'm trying to decide this, or I'm struggling with this. That's how I, go about it without directly asking them. Because, I guess because if I feel like they're gonna be like, don't ask me, it's up to you. Or I don't know, kind of like, like I've asked my mom a couple times about, when I can't decide between books I want to buy when I go to Books A Million, because I stick to just buying one book, and she's like, don't ask me, because, she's like, this is your decision, your choice, you're gonna be the one reading the book, not me. So I kind of beat around the bush, I guess that's what that would be. But anyway, so I settled on 3 books, including the Kindle. My Kindle, I brought that with me. And I read a little bit of Blackwater. That's the book I'm reading on Kindle. That's a big book, so it's taking me a long time to read. But I am enjoying it. I'm reading it I'm reading it slowly, like 2 or 4 chapters whenever, except if I read it during road trips, like traveling to my grandma's or my sister's, and I decide to read it then, I might read more than 4 chapters. But yeah, it's just the family's life, their progress. It's not super scary. It has scary moments, but it's not super scary. It's just the lives of this family. And, there's a little family secret. But it's really, it's really good. Especially, like, it's just, if you like family drama. So, the only book I ended up finishing was And actually, this is a book I recently purchased before we left. That is Franz Kafka's The Trial. Because I've been trying to give Kafka another chance because it was either in college or high school. We read his book, The Metamorphosis. I think that's how you say it, because it's a similar title to the Ovid's work, which is about the same thing. I mean, they're called the same thing because they're about the same thing. People transforming and but so but I decided to, what, I'm gonna pick up this one. This one sounded really interesting. This our main character Joseph K. He's a bank clerk and he wakes up and one morning and finds that he has been arrested. And he has to go to trial, and the whole book is basically him trying to learn about the court system and how to handle the system. Like his uncle comes, visits him, and gets him a lawyer, and he's constantly talking to these people about the courts that are involved, the people that are involved with the courts that have a connection to them, and asking them their advice. And he slowly learns that everybody is kind of connected to the courts in some way. Like, he meets this artist that is the court painter. He will paint the portraits of the various judges, and his dad also did that. The artist's dad also did it, so he's now the court painter. So everybody in some capacity is involved with the courts. And he's just trying to, and they're giving him this advice and warning him, you can't mess with these guys, and just cooperate, and what you need to, and telling him what he needs to do and how to handle the situation. And I don't think we ever learn what he did, unless I missed it, because there were times when I was reading this and I was tired and falling asleep while I was reading, and then there were distractions because my mom and my grandma were talking, or the news was on, and it's as I've always said, her house is one floor, except for the bonus room, which I never go up there. I mean, I do go up there, but so it's hard to avoid the TV, the sound of the TV, and it's always up so loud because my grandma is losing her hearing, and she doesn't like wearing hearing aids, so we gave up on that. So the TV is always loud, and my mom's my mom and her are arguing with each other. And so there's so much noise in that house, and it's hard for me to relax, and there's really no comfortable place to sit. So it was kind of hard for me to read, except for sometimes I'll go outside on the back porch, sit on there. She has a little bench, she has 2 benches, so that can be kind of uncomfortable. And then when it's hot, eventually I have to go inside because I'm melting. So I might have missed. So basically, I say this because I might have missed it. That why he was on trial, like what crime he committed. He doesn't know when he gets arrested, and he keeps saying, and maybe he does, and see, because he says he's innocent. So he told the court painter that he was innocent. So I don't know if that means, if that's because he just doesn't know what crime he committed, or he does know, or maybe he does know and I just missed him talking about that, and that he does, and he knows he didn't commit that crime, or he just knows he doesn't know, and he just, he's like, there's no way I could have committed a crime. So I don't, again, I feel really dumb, but I don't remember them declaring what crime he committed. And it's just this is definitely obviously a critique on the court of law system, and how it was run, it's a criticism of it. And now I don't understand all about the law or anything like that enough to really provide a commentary on and point out what things that it's critiquing. But I still think obviously I could still read it and get into the story and feel the injustice and just find the system so weird, and just I kept anticipating, wondering. I mean, just like the current other book I'm reading, this one, the Unconsoled, there were so many moments where I was so uncomfortable and kept thinking what was going to, because he was allowed to go back to work. I mean, it wasn't like he was put in jail or anything. He was allowed to go about his day. I mean, that's why he was able to talk to these people. And then there's the whole thing with the lawyer, and I wasn't sure if you could trust the lawyer or not, because, because he was under the court. I wasn't sure if he was under the court's thumb or not, and I didn't know. And there was one point, and Kay, he's called Kay throughout the book. You know how some people address some people by their last names instead of their first names. So Kay, he's talking to him, which I'm wondering if Kay is Kafka. Because, sometimes some authors put themselves in the story. But Joseph K figures he can get out of this case himself. He can be his own lawyer. And he wants to fire his lawyer, and the lawyer is, determined to talk about him and says, it's like, I get vibes of the lawyer, which he's getting money, of course, so that's probably why. He would be getting paid, and he doesn't want to lose that commission. But he keeps talking to him and, says, well, if you might change your mind. You say that now, but you might change your mind later. And then Joseph meets this guy, Block, through a female friend of his, this woman who offers to help him. And she introduces, and he's also kind of having some problems with the courts. And the lawyer kind of holds a lot over Block, it seems like, and keeps him hostage in a way. And he eventually gets mad, blames Joseph for his humiliation. How the lawyer treats him like like a lapdog. So I did not trust the lawyer. But yeah, this one this is considered the definitive edition of and this one also has because I guess this was Kafka never got a chance to finish this. So there's a friend of his, I think he's a friend of his. Because there's a letter, they exchange letters. And he was the one who got it published. He acquired some of Kafka's unfinished manuscripts, including this one. And so there's some notes in the back, letters exchanged between Kafka and this guy, and little bits of deleted chapters and deleted fragments from chapters, and so that, which is really cool that that's included. I do wish that if people published an author's work after the fact, once they're gone, if the author was okay with it, if the author was good with it and didn't mind it, then I wish that the author would have their notes all together and stuff, so that, and maybe some commentary explaining why they decided to delete chapters, or why they took things out and put things in and changed some things. I'd be curious about that kind of stuff. What's really good is Tolkien, was very meticulous about that. I think from what I've read, he was very meticulous about that. But yeah, so so I really enjoyed this book. I found it really, which is weird to say because of how this is kind of a dark story, but it's also kind of funny too. It's dark humor, and I guess it would be considered a satire in a way. So that's the only one I finished. And so the ones I ended up reading with me are, I didn't even really touch this one. I read a little bit on the way back yesterday, but my aunt, who is currently not allowed to drive right now because she had an accident, and so she can't drive, so my mom picked her up, and that meant that I had to sit in back with Mercy, so she could sit up front with my mom, and it was kind of hard to read with. And it's like the reason why I was always sitting up front until yesterday was, when we would do these trips, is because I like to read in the car, and Murphy sitting on my lap makes it a little difficult to do that because he's like really up in this space, and because being in the car makes him nervous. He gets scared. He does not like being in the car. I think he's claustrophobic, and I think from his first experience of being in a car when we brought him home was not a great experience. So he likes to sit. He's like right in your lap. He can't relax. He won't lay down. So he's like standing on my lap, and his paws are kind of pressing into, on my leg, and he's very nervous. He gets scared, so it's kind of hard for me to read, and so I didn't get a lot of reading done, but I did read a little bit of this. Got at least to part 2. So Bran, who's our Robin Hood character, there is a payment, a ransom on him that he can't afford to pay because his dad, they gave away, the monks gave away his dad's fortune, so he doesn't have any money to pay the guy who now owns his family's land and stuff. So he's on the run now, and he had just met a woman and her baby boy who were attacked, so he helped them out. And then I don't know how to say her name. It's this very Welsh inspired. This is very well. It takes, instead of it being in, like, it's in Wales. This story takes place there, so there's Welsh names that I don't know how to pronounce. I'd have to hear them myself to know how to pronounce them. And so I'm just going to call her Marion. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Marion tries to talk him out of leaving because right away she's like, you're king of this land now. You got to protect the people. You got to, and he's like, I can't because this guy's going to kill me. So yeah, he has left her to go on the run, and he's now in the forest. And I think this section ended with him getting captured again. I think that's what just happened. Yeah. So it's a retelling of Robin Hood, but it takes place in a different time period and different setting than most Robin Hood legends. So, but it is more historical, and there's really not much fantasy, and there's really no fantasy. I mean, there might be some fantasy elements coming up. Because I did hear that he just crossed paths with a woman she talks about the legend of what the title of the series refers to, the Raven King, and all that kind of stuff, and I think she's supposed to like heal him, but that could be she's just a medicine woman or something. So this is definitely more of a an adventure story rather than a traditional fantasy with magical creatures and magic and all that. But I am liking it. It's just, I did not prioritize this. What I did prioritize was the Unconsoled by Kazu Ishiguro, because I want to get this read. Because I've said this before, I think I explained this before, that, I know Kazu Ishiguro is a very popular author amongst some of the booktubers I follow, and they all talk about Never Let Me Go, or Remains the Day, and now The Buried Giant is one that's mentioned. And I want to read this before anyone else. I hear other people start talking about it. Because as I've said before, I miss the whole feeling that sometimes, occasionally I would like to discover a book on my own without BookTube's influence. And, I mean, BookTube is still influencing me because the author is known on BookTube. But I kind of miss that feeling of, that's the only thing about BookTube other than all the drama I hear about. But I'm never involved in that drama, I just hear about it. And But my biggest problem with booktube is that I'm hear about so many books. I hear about, so it makes me aware of all these books, and sometimes I don't always. It's not me discovering it on my own. It's other people getting into it. Introducing me to it. So it's no longer It's no longer something I discovered. It's no longer something I got into. It's something that everyone else already talked about this. So I kind of want to read, a book that not everybody, a Kazu Ishiguro, a book that not everyone I haven't heard people talk about yet. And that's, this one. Now, I do, from reading it, I can understand why some people wouldn't like it. It's very confusing, very dreamlike. It's kind of a little weird. It's like this concert pianist goes to this European country, and I'm guessing Germany. And it's basically, he gets there and everyone's asking him to do things and he doesn't remember, but then he starts to remember. And these people are asking, and so many people are asking him to do stuff for them, and they're not considering what he wants. Like, he keeps telling people, my time is limited, I gotta do this, and I get to spend time with my family, because he does have I guess she's his wife and son or girlfriend. I don't know what their relationship. He's trying to spend time with them, but even they're pushing him right now, getting on his nerves a little bit and demanding things of him, demanding his time. And he has all these weird moments where, like, he tries to talk and stand up, speak up, because he gets annoyed by people, and somehow he can't. Like, there's one scene where this woman from his childhood comes back into his life, and she's been telling people, I know him, we used to be friends, and these women don't believe her, so she runs into him, and she's like, why didn't you show up the other night? I look like a fool. And so he feels bad about that, and so they go to meet these women, and they're just talking about this one time where the circle of other artists that Ryder, the pianist is named Ryder. Mr. Ryder, when they hang out with her, like his little social group, they decide, we'll go to the zoo. We'll do this famous zoo visit to the zoo, and like one of them invites these women to come, and apparently Ryder was supposed to go, and he doesn't, and I don't think he was invited, or he doesn't remember being invited. And he ends up not, or he was invited, but he wanted to go with Sophie. I'm just going to say, for the sake of argument, the wife and his little boy, Boris. And so he didn't go, he wasn't at the zoo, but these women, they see someone from a distance talking to these other artist guys, and they're like, oh, well, we did see him. We may as well tell people we did see him, even though they don't know for sure it was him. They just saw someone from a distance, and they assume, oh, it had to be him. And then, like, his friend, I can't remember her name, she's trying, I think it's Fiona. She's trying to tell them, she's like, you guys, no, you didn't see him. And she's getting slowly angrier. And so is Ryder. He's getting annoyed by these women's presumptuousness. And he tries to reveal himself, because they think this guy's just her little friend that she brought over. And for some reason, he can't talk. Like, he keeps trying to, but all he is able to do is like, kind of stuff. Like, kind of a coughing sound. So for some reason, he can't talk. And Fiona's kind of getting pissed at him that he's not saying anything. She's like, why? And then finally, she's like, why didn't you say anything? Why aren't you helping me? And these women are still, like, thinking something's wrong with him. He's ridiculous. They don't realize it's Ryder. This person that keeps saying, oh, we met him. And the women, yeah, they were getting on my nerves. And I was getting so, like, I'm like, Ryder, say something. Why can't you say something? So, and I felt bad for him, because he was getting angry and frustrated with these women. And he kept saying to, but for some reason he couldn't. So it has a lot of, like, and then the transitions are weird because all of a sudden he finds himself doing something else, and he's like, he does, and these people like Sophie will bring up things of, you promised me this, or we remember when we did this and it didn't go well, and he's he doesn't remember at first, but then it will be triggered. The memory will be triggered, and then all of a sudden he'll remember, and feel indignant for like Sophie or whoever. So it's a very weird book. And I think, like I said, it's kind of looking at the whole idea of expectations and people demanding stuff of you. He's, like I said, he keeps telling people, I have a tight schedule, I can't do this. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we'll only take a few minutes. And then it takes longer than that. Like, no one's considering his opinion. No one's thinking about what he really wants. They're just, give me attention, make me look cool, make me look like, he's like the hotel man at the hotel he's staying at. He's like, the manager's like, oh, what I realized, I'm gonna make you change. I feel like you should change your room because the other room you're in doesn't suit you. It doesn't fit you. Like, I was making that room up before you came and was assigning this room to you, but then I realized once you're in the room, it just didn't fit you. It just didn't work. So I'm gonna, you need to change the room. And Ryder's insisting, no, this room is fine. I like this room. I'm comfortable in this room. And he's like, well, no, this is really important to me. You need to change your room. And he, I feel like the room just doesn't fit for you, and you don't understand. And this is important to me. And, or like, at one point, a journalist and photographer are trying to get, interview, and he finally is able to meet with them, and they have him stand in front of this particular spot, this historic site or something, and he's standing there, and they tell him to pose, and then for some reason, after he does it, there are people that get mad at him for it. Like, there's something wrong with that particular location. Like, there's history that's not good history, that looks bad, and people are getting mad at him for that. For something, it's like, why'd you pose in front of that? How dare you? Like, this makes you look bad, and he doesn't know why. Like, it's not explained. He's just told that he shouldn't stand in front of this thing. And then there was this one other guy who was kind of an amateur pianist. He's supposed to perform in concert, like, kind of be, I guess, probably like the opening act for Ryder. And he had asked Ryder to listen to his performance, to give him, critique and help him decide about how well he can do the piece and everything. And then he's talking to Ryder and this other woman, Miss Collins, at a party Ryder got invited to. He meets them there, and he said, he's like, he tells how he's kind of put in a bit of predicament because, he has decided what piece he wants to perform. And this concert is going to be in a few days. But he learns that his mom, this young pianist, that his mom wants him to perform this particular piece, a different piece. And she doesn't, and apparently, according to him, his mom doesn't spell it out. She kind of just hints. Like, she'll do things like play the song on the record player that she likes, the music that she likes, that she would want him to play in front of his dad, but not say that she wants him to play. She would rather just plays it for him and his dad, like hinting. So he's like, I don't know, I feel like I should do this. And, Ryder, who's experienced concert pianist, who knows music, is like, well, it's a little bit of a difficult piece, and you only got a few days left to learn it. Like, I think maybe even less than that, maybe even like 24 hours. And this one, Miss Collins, interrupts Ryder while he's kind of explaining this. And he's like, oh, you're only saying that because you think you're so superior to us. You think you know everything. And, of course, later she finds out who he is, that he's this famous concert pianist. And she's like, well, I was only saying this because she all of a sudden, when she realizes who he is, she gets all defensive and explaining herself. And, like, so, she says, you just don't think he's capable. That's the other argument. She said, you just don't think he's capable of learning it. Like, she acts like Ryder's arrogant or something. And later on, when he's talking to this young man, about it, the young man basically, he again tries to explain. It's like, I'm sure you could, but I just really think you're limited on time. You only have like a day or two to learn it. And the guy is like, the young man's like, well, no, you know what, you only think I can't do it. You just don't think I can do it. Let me perform this piece for you. And it's late at night, and Ryder's tired and wants to go to bed. So he's gonna play it for him anyway, make him listen. And Ryder's like, okay, fine, I'll stand outside the door and listen a little bit, but then I'm going to bed. And he does, and eventually he leaves. Like, all these people just guilt trip Ryder, I think. They just make him feel bad. He's like, we demand your time, and you're not making time for us, but, oh, it's okay, but, you really shouldn't make time for us, kind of response. Like, it's just very, like, this book is very, it's, very, like, frustrating. I feel so bad for Ryder. Now, of course, we're seeing things from his perspective. So, the whole thing with with Sophie and Boris feels like little, I don't know what to think about that, because on the one hand, we're seeing one side of it. We're seeing Ryder's perspective. We're in his head. So we don't know. And he does later remember things like how she was treated at the other function, when it's her fears about the people at this other, this gallery party that they're supposed to go to, that she's not comfortable with it because these people weren't very nice to her. And he's like, this is for him, this is like, I have to do this appearance, and oh, it's not that big. Don't worry, we'll get through it. I just have to do this. And he's kind of slowly getting annoyed. And he's also getting annoyed because Boris, he's a little boy, and he's very, like, how kids are, like, they're all of a sudden hungry, and, or they have to go to the bathroom, and don't have the patience, or they get distracted easily. So he's losing his patience with Boris. As well. Like, so it's just sometimes there's some uncomfortable moments, some moments where you're, like, very anxious and wondering, and like I said, you just have Ryder's perspective, and he's a celebrity, and it's like, you kind of feel bad for them. But if you're on the other end of that, where you're the person who is a fan of this person and wants to, you kind of understand why some people would be like, they would really want to really get the opportunity to spend time with this person. But yeah, this is a really intriguing read, and like I said, I can understand why not everybody likes it. It's not for everybody, because it's almost confusing at times. And it's kind of jarring when reading this. So obviously I've spent most of my time with the Unconsoled. Next to the trial, because that's the one I finished. I did read like I said, I read Blackwater as well, and get a little bit of that done. And I just want to try to get myself to read like 3 books every, like, try to just only focus on 3 books at a time. I really want to do that. And that way, because it can be so, overwhelming, just having to go back and forth and having to decide which books I want to focus on. And then there's like certain books I can't read at certain times because, like, I need to be focused on that book completely and no distractions. And as I always say, whenever I go to places like my grandma's or go to my sister's, there's certain kinds of distractions, that certain books, heavy books that require a lot of thought and that are like, they're not straightforward narratives. It can be kind of hard to read them during certain times when there's all this noise around you, or like people are constantly interrupting you, and there's not like, and there's just some books that you need to read like quiet. Like, I mean, I know there are some people that can read with music in the background, and I mean, I can read with music that's not like words, that doesn't have lyrics, which I like AMSR. Like, I've been occasionally doing those. Like, I'm still working on my next review to type up and post on Goodreads and Storygraph is my review for the Tolkien biography. And, which I would work on that today, but I'm too distracted. Like I said, my aunt's visiting, even though she's not here right now. She's not gonna be gone long, and I kind of like to talk about my dad about the review, but I know he's napping right now, probably, so I might wait until she has left and like work on it tomorrow. But I was working on that, and I decided to play an AMSR video so I could work on that. And I didn't call up the internet because sometimes I have tabs open of the internet on, all the sites that go on, like YouTube and stuff. And I decided to not turn on it really helps when I don't turn on the internet right away. And I decided to put in, I'm attaching the headphones to my computer and playing an AMSR video of music from Lord of the Rings, particularly the Shire focused. Because, like I said, I'm working on the Tolkien biography review. I'm typing that up. So, kind of like goes together. And I was able to get a lot done, which I feel like, I hope this is considered, my dad finds this a good review, because, it's one of the reviews I was able to really do a good job with, because I feel like it's almost easier to do nonfiction reviews because you don't have to recall, like, plot points and character names and try to interpret what the author is trying to say with the character and with the scene and stuff, and the message they might be trying to convey with the fiction. Because nonfiction is often just facts, like stating facts. Not always, of course. Sometimes it's bad in analyzing things, but it's almost like but it's also a biography, so it's almost easier to do that because I don't have to recall like scenes and characters and stuff like that. In a way, you are recalling characters because you're the people in this person's life that the biography is about. So in a way, those are characters. But it's just it's a little bit easier. But then I feel like I'm not talking about the writing itself. I'm kind of talking about what he wrote about. So part of me is a little bit, but then I think maybe this is a silly concern because, you're reviewing how the author wrote about this topic. I just don't want it to come off as I'm reviewing the person that they're writing about, or maybe I am, like, I don't know how to explain it. I'm just anxious about this review and hope it's, even though I feel proud of it and I was doing great with it, and I wonder, am I reviewing the book or reviewing the person that the book is about? But then again, it is a biography. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. But, anyway, so yeah, so I'm working on that as well. And like I said, I will do a birthday book haul tomorrow, probably. I'll film that tomorrow, but I don't know when you'll probably see that tomorrow night or Monday. We will see when I get it filmed. Because I'm probably not going to film it tonight. Because, we're going out to dinner and I'm going to get home late. I might film it tonight. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, so that is how my reading is going. And, I'd love to know how your reading is going currently in May, and I hope you like hearing about the books I'm reading, and I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye!